Hi, everyone. Good evening. This is District Needs and Budget Committee. I guess let's start. I know Angel Giselle texted me that she'll be on in 2 minutes.
She's on now.
She's on? Okay, awesome. All right, guys, ground rules. No one may speak until granted the floor. CB11 members, if you have questions about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through the Zoom. If you click the participant icon, the participant panel should appear and you should find the raise hand function there. If you still have technical difficulties, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty to the staff. The chat function should not be used for CB11 business or questions about the agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information, such as your email address, that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Please keep your questions and comments succinct, I can never say that word, short and germane, and to the discussion. Members of the public, if you have questions or comments about the subjects on the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom and wait to be recognized. Those are the ground rules. And we can call this meeting to order. Angel, if you could do roll call.
Sure. Committee members, when I call your name, please answer present. Stephanie Arroyo.
Here.
Giselle Malave.
Here.
Malik McCullough is excused. Nelson Rama.
Here.
You want to press the button?
Arturo Perez.
Present.
Asher Rodriguez. Don Sanders. Jason Villanueva is excused. Michelle Wilcher Clement. We have quorum.
We have quorum.
Yes.
Awesome. So I hope you guys had a chance to look at the agenda. We'd like to do an adoption of the agenda. Unless anyone has any issues with the agenda, any comments, any concerns, want to change anything. If not, we will adopt the agenda as is. Seeing as no one's saying anything, we'll move forward. There are no committee minutes. Our committee minutes will be coming soon. I do apologize. However, all our meetings are recorded and can be found through our YouTube channel and through our website, if I'm not mistaken. So we will definitely get those committee minutes. And if anyone on this board would like to help me with that, because there's a few that I need to get done. I mean, we have the videos, we can go through them and we can finish them. I need to get them to Angel as soon as possible. I'm happy to hear anyone who would like to help me with that. Moving forward, do we have any announcements? Okay. Since I hear we have Angel, no announcements on your end?
Michelle has her hand up.
How come I don't see Michelle? Go ahead, Michelle.
Hi, I would like to announce the conference, the second annual East Harlem Earth Day Climate Change Conference is happening this Friday at the City of the Museum of New York from 10 until 2. However, we would love to have people come and volunteer their time to help with the conference. So we're looking for as many CB11 members to participate as possible, as well as also to just attend. And that's the announcement.
What time?
From 10 until 2 is the actual event. However, the doors for people that wish to volunteer to help will be opening at 9:30. And it's at the Museum of the City of New York.
What day is it again? I'm sorry.
It's right opposite the Conservancy Gardens of Central Park.
I think it's Fifth Avenue, 100 and.
Oh, what day is it again? When are you having this event again?
This Friday.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Are there any other announcements? I don't see any hands. All right, informational updates. Okay, I'm a little lost as to what informational updates are, or that's if we have any informational updates, right?
You're updating on something that you've discussed in a previous meeting, or if there are issues relative to the committee's work that you want to update on, for example, like if council's having hearings on a specific topic relative to your work, then you want to.
Got you. Actually, thank you. So thank you. So yeah, let me do an update real quick. So as you guys know, the preliminary budget hearings have already been completed. What happens now is City Council will now kind of respond to the preliminary budget that the mayor put out. With that, once that happens, if everything's okay, there should be a sign off on the budget in June. But I think we do have an opportunity, Angel, correct me if I'm wrong. We do have an opportunity after the city conducts their response to the preliminary to respond to the budget before it gets signed off, right?
Does the executive budget will be released, if it hasn't been already, like by the end of this month? So, and there'll be hearings on that. So there'll also be opportunity to submit testimony and or reaction responses to that budget as well.
Yep, exactly. It's called the executive budget, and there will be hearings to that, and that's where we can respond to the budget before it gets signed off on, which usually happens the first week of June. That's why it's very important what we're doing in this committee, because what we hear from our other committees, the information we get regarding any budgetary issues within the city, any of our organizations that are telling you that they're not getting any more funding, these and they're providing a service to the community. These are things that we have to keep in mind. So once the executive budget is out, we can ask them to make sure that they continue to fund these programs that we think are important. So that's my update, informational update. So what I'm so glad you guys came, and unfortunately some people were sick, so we couldn't do this in person, and I do apologize. But what I wanted to have this meeting for was regarding the preparing and reviewing of district needs and budget committee members, and just like all what we do in this committee. So I guess we'll start off with speaking on what each committee member does here and like what their responsibility is. We don't have all of you guys, but I think what I want to do is I want to ask each of you to like state who are here, state like which committees you're on, and if you understand what your role is in this committee. Can we start with Michelle?
My mouth is full right now.
Okay.
Can you go to the picture?
Sure. I'll come back to you, Michelle. Nilsa.
Hello, I'm currently on this committee. I'm also on office oversight and land use and executive. I understand my role to be a liaison for the information that we need to gather for this committee, to then get that information on the committees that I'm on, and to also give back information to the committees that I am part of what's happening here. It's my understanding also that I should be updating any spreadsheets or anything that this committee decides to use so that we can have things in a timely fashion so that then we can organize it.
And Nelsie, you're the liaison for which committee again?
I'm on office oversight, land use. I'm on executive and this committee. I don't think I'm missing anybody.
Gotcha. So I think land, so I guess you would be our land use person.
Okay,
Art Perez? Do you,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, do I need to repeat the question?
no, you don't need to repeat the question.
Okay,
I'm in the Human Resources Committee, and I will echo what my responsibility is from what Nilsa said, basically a budget liaison between Budget Committee and District Needs and Budget and the HR, and relay information back and forth between the two bodies.
awesome. And just, so I'm sorry, Art, so you know you're the liaison for Human Services, right?
Yes.
Awesome, okay. Giselle?
Hello. So I am on Economic Development and Culture. I'm the liaison for that committee. And my understanding is that I streamline the process of the district needs and budget submission each year by pretty much just bringing back and forth information from the committee that I'm on to district needs, and pretty much like the spokesperson, I would say, for the needs that EchoDev has in terms of budget.
Thank you. Thank you. And you said Echo Dev, right? Yeah, Echo Dev.
Correct.
Asher?
All right, hello. I am on the Youth and Education Committee, Environment, Open Space and Parks. In this committee, and basically echoing what everyone says, I'm the liaison for Youth and Education. Basically, my role is to bring their concerns about the budget and also just what we discuss in committee and report on it here.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So exactly. So it's really, really important when you guys are in your committee meetings to make sure to ask the questions. Is there anything, and not just when it comes to budget, it also can be policy work, right? If there's a certain legislation that's being passed that you're hearing in your committees, an organization or even members of the community saying, this isn't going to work for me. And the reason this isn't going to work for me is, reason A, reason B, reason C. These are things that I would love for you guys to bring back to this committee, because in this committee is where we can kind of recommend to the executive board and to the full board to respond to certain things, right? We can respond to the budget. We can respond to legislation that's going to affect our community, right? The reason we have these jobs is to make sure that we are speaking for the people who don't have the time and don't have the time and can't or don't want or don't have the abilities that we have and don't have the space and the time that we have, right? This is a privilege, and with this privilege, we should make sure that we use it and we use it rightfully. Michelle, I am so sorry. Are you ready to respond?
Yes, I finished my apple. I was so hungry, I just needed to eat that. So let me put my hand down.
I think you muted yourself.
Okay, public safety and transportation. I am a member of the environmental open space and parks. I am also on the executive board and district needs and budget. I'm also on a subcommittee for the conference that's happening this Friday. And I believe that the role that I have is to be a liaison for public safety and transportation, as well as to have a voice on the committee as a whole. When I see that I need to raise a subject that might not have been raised, that I have heard about, that the constituents really would like to talk about and have no voice themselves and do not feel like coming to, or don't know how, or don't want to come to a community board meeting. I'm nice for them.
And that's exactly it, right? I would add the caveat though, if we are doing any information that comes from a different committee, that we make sure that we have a conversation with that committee liaison and make sure that that was spoken within that committee. Only because we want to respect everyone's committee and we want to make sure that we aren't sidestepping and like not giving the opportunity to the committee. Angel, can we move on to the next?
That's the only agenda item this evening.
Excuse me?
That's the only agenda item this evening.
Got you. So that, okay, that was pretty much, got you. Actually, so then better. Can I share my screen, or are you gonna share your screen? Because I want to show them the timeline, our work plan, and where we should be, and what's going on, and how it works. You want me to
If you have it ready to present, you can go ahead.
Because I did my studying today for you guys. This is like work or school. Do you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you guys. Okay, so we are in the month of April, right? So I also want to, before I move into this timeline, I do apologize. I wanted to let you guys know that another reason why I had this meeting is because I feel like, unfortunately, in February, I dropped the ball, we dropped the ball. Things were not done within the committee. It was taken over to executive, and most of you are on executive, made sure the work got done, and I appreciate it. However, I want to make sure that moving forward, we're on the right track, right? We understand what our roles are, we understand what our responsibilities are, and we are going to do that. You guys already sit in all these other meetings, so just bringing back the information and taking back the information is something that you guys, I know you guys can do this. And, you know, a lot of you guys already do this outside of the community board in your everyday lives. So I know it's a lot to ask for because we do this late evenings. But I really appreciate it if you guys make sure that you're bringing back to your committees what's going on, and you're bringing back to this committee what's going on. I'm repeating myself. Anyway, so we are in April. As we stated, the mayor is going to release the executive budget mid-April, which has already happened. The community board has 30 days. Well, it hasn't happened yet. It should be happening mid-April, late May, which is what Angel was talking about. The executive budget hearings are going to happen. We have 30 days to review and comment on the executive budget. What we missed out on was back in February when we were working on our, was it back in February? Yes, when we were working on our draft statement preliminary budget. There were not sufficient responses that came from each committee. I think years previous, we always had other staffers and other people on the committee who kind of like made it their own and kind of ran with it. We didn't have that this time. And so we kind of, I don't know, we dropped the ball. Some people responded, some people didn't respond. And I want you guys to understand that when you respond to certain things, we know that we may not have the correct language. Just send it and we will definitely tweak it. There are enough people on this board who can tweak the language to make it more concise and better to use, right? So please don't fear to not respond. Moving forward, I'm also gonna ask that in the months of February, January, February, and March, especially February, we're not only gonna have this committee meeting for us, the committee board members, but we're also opening it up to the chairs of each committee. Just in case someone falls through, someone gets sick, things aren't happening, conversations aren't being liaisons, like things aren't going back to each committee. We want to make sure, especially when we're doing our responses, that the chair is there as well, so they can also bring back information. So that's one thing that we are going to try to move forward and add to this when we do this in February. Going back, we are in the month of April. Once the executive budget comes out, we're going to have a chance to respond. Since there's a lot of information on the executive budget, I don't know, Angel, maybe you can respond to this. I don't know if do you put anything on our district needs responses or anything from the executive board that we can use in case we want to respond to the executive budget?
I'm sorry, can you clarify that question? I didn't understand. Say
So
that
with the
again.
executive, when the executive budget comes out, right?
Yes,
Is it just gonna be that large plan, that large book that has all the responses and we
yes,
look over it ourselves?
yes.
It's not, okay, it's not shortened.
No, it's formatted the exact same way as the preliminary budget documents. It's just updated to reflect whatever changes council and the mayor have made since the preliminary stuff.
Gotcha. So the only thing that staff does is they'll break it down for community board 11, right? Like only the information for community board 11 will be separated.
So what OMB does is they prepare the register of community board requests for each community district. So we'll get that and then we'll forward that along with everything else for you. So that in the register is contained the responses to CB11's budget request specifically, and then updated language that reflects any changes between what the response was to our request in January, and however those responses may have changed at the executive budget step. Make sense?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep, gotcha. So guys, I guys, if you remember our budget request track, I don't know if I have it. Even if I have it, I don't know. Where's our budget request? Is this it? No, that's the reference. Is this is the statements?
Second one, worksheet.
Thank you. So we would get responses to this.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So go to the third tab, full list of prioritized requests. The third tab, that one. That's everything we submitted on Halloween, right? Those are all our budget requests. So the responses would be to those requests.
Gotcha. And so these are broken down by committee. So we will make sure that you guys each have this. You will, with your committee, talk about this and see if there's any responses that we have for them. Am I wrong, Angel?
So the budget register will have all of these requests contained in it. So all you have to do is just kind of look across to the right and the response will be there to each one of them. And it'll be in the order of priority that we submitted it. So it'll look, it'll reflect what we submitted here. So it'll be 1 through 30, 1 through whatever the other number is. So in the register, it's all in one place.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, so that's gonna happen April, May, right? Angel? I just want to make sure.
I keep muting myself. Yes.
Gotcha. Good. All right. I'm sorry. So yeah, so that should be happening April, May. So that is going to be our next step. We're going to meet again. We're not meeting in the month of May, right? Because we usually don't meet. What are the months we don't meet, Angel?
So it says it on here, right? So if you just scroll down each month, so October, like optional in May. Because by the time May's completed, they're already deep in negotiations. They kind of, by they, I mean the administration and council, they just go into their little room. But there isn't space to engage that conversation. But there are hearings held by council, before they go into the little room to negotiate. So if you wanted to meet before those, I guess you could, it's up to you all. And then, discuss and decide whether or not there's going to be any testimony submitted. This committee could do that, or the individual committees themselves.
And the only problem is,
So these are all opportunities, and that's a matter of which opportunity you take, which opportunity you don't take. Like not like you can do this, but you're not obligated to do it, right? That's what I be clear. As opposed to January, where it is formally, it's a formal part of the process for us to respond to the preliminary budget.
gotcha. But I think if we try to do, if even one committee, right, gets engaged enough and organizes enough where it can respond to one of the executive budget hearings or submit some testimony, I think that would be a win for us, because then it'll get our group practicing responding to things. And that's basically what we want this committee to do, is to respond to budget and policies. And that's in response to the committee and in response to the community. We're looking at Community Board 11, and we want to respond to how the city is looking at spending its money and how the city is looking at legislating things that can affect our community, right? So maybe us trying to respond to the executive budget, like I said, even if it's one committee, one agency, I think that wouldn't be such a bad thing, and I think we can try to do that. Actually, board members, do you think that's something that you guys would be interested in doing?
Yes. Stephanie, may I say something?
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's a good opportunity. So I think where I get lost in these months, it's like, since we're almost ready to not really disconnect in a way, because community board work is all year long, but I guess since we're ready to kind of leave our work for the summer, but this is where the work kind of starts for this committee. I think it would just be helpful if maybe for the month of April, Angel, you tell us okay, one of the meetings that they having, right? What are these meetings called? The ones that are happening in April, the consultations, the
No, in April, City Council holds hearings as part of the executive budget. The consultations is another step. That's for in the summer. We could talk about that.
We would benefit by going to the hearing, right? We would benefit by just sitting in and listening to the hearing, or do we actually get a chance to be a part of the hearing, say something?
They take public testimony, so you definitely can say something.
Okay, so then.
And you can also, and that's what I'm saying. We don't know what it's going to look like in May. We don't know if the city will then move into completely in person. We don't know what that looks like. But as of right now, everything's through Zoom. So we can definitely testify through Zoom or in person. And we can also submit testimony, right?
Yeah, through online, yep.
Yeah, no. But I mean, we could just we can write something as a board and send a response and
Okay.
it as a written testimony to whatever executive budget hearing that's going on. And, if we want to support it or we want to say no.
So do you want us to bring back to you something to put into the testimony?
I mean, I think what I kind of want to do is when is it, Angel, when is it that we go on break for the summer?
July and August, there are no required meetings.
Got you. Okay, so I think it all depends on when the executive budget comes out, right? Because if the executive budget was to come out at the end of April, we still have our meetings in May. So then this is a conversation that you can have with your committee, right? If it comes out in May, and then, I mean, I guess, yeah, if it comes out in May, we can still have that conversation with our committees in June. And then since we meet later in the month, yeah, if you guys can bring back any responses that you guys want to respond, if anyone in your committee wants to testify, you know, and we can just support that and help them move forward in that. So I think that's how I kind of think we should structure. Does that make sense to you guys? And I don't want to just hear yourself. You guys can call out. I don't want to like, just please, I want you guys to engage. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page on this. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns?
Stephanie, just so I'm clear, when you're talking about testimony, you're talking about us bringing back information and liaising and finding out if anyone from the committee themselves wants to testify? Or is it that you're asking us as members of this committee and members of the relevant committee if we want to bring back the testimony? Do you know what I mean?
Got you. I kind of mean both, right? Like, I'm not, this is all, like Angel said, this is an opportunity. We are just encouraging. This is not something that we have to do. I kind of just want to get us into the practice of responding to things. So back when we start over the year, we're kind of already in tune with, okay, if there's a spreadsheet that we're sharing and we need to comment on it and we got to send it to someone, we're kind of already conditioned to do that, for lack of better terms, and then we can just get it done when it needs to be done, right? Which is, we definitely want to continue to respond to the statement of district needs, which happens in February. Right now, what we're doing is not a must, it's not a should, we should, but it's not a must, right? We should be responding to the executive budget. The executive budget is basically saying, we want to spend this amount of money here, right? We're going to have responses to our budget requests. We're going to give you this. We can't do this, right? I want that to be taken back to your committee. I want you to speak to your committee members. Hey, what do you guys think? Right? Each committee, you guys have an audience. You have the public who will respond to certain things, right? We don't all know what's going on in every part of district of Community Board 11, right? So information that you may not have known of, but someone's concerned about is something that you should bring back here, right? And we can use that information to respond to anything that has been given that's public from the city. And we have 30 days to respond. So this is the opportunity that we want to take to respond. We also want to let our committee members know there's a hearing going on. If you guys want to testify without the community board, please go ahead. We want to encourage our community members to go testify. However, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, and maybe you want us to do something about it, you want us to respond, then that's information that at your committee you can talk about. Do we as a committee want to respond to this, right? If your committee says, yes, we want to respond to that, we want to bring it back to this group. So this group could say, okay, we definitely want to respond to it as well. And we may want to add other things because we have liaisons from other committees that may have something to say about that subject. And then we can respond to it. Then we bring it to our full board. Full board, do we want to respond completely if this is just a testimony that we're submitting, or if this is actual like presenting and submitting? Angel, correct me if I'm wrong, that has to go through the full board if we're representing the board. But if we're representing ourselves, this is also to encourage our community members to do this for yourself. We may not be on this community board for too long, right? But we are doing the job and we want other people to do the job. The only way we can get other people to do the job is showing them how we did the job. Angel, do you want to add?
Yeah, sure. So Well, as it relates to testimony, so I like your point about encouraging just the general public to testify, so to be aware that they can and that they should. But then, you know, the specific committees can prepare and submit testimony that does not require board approval, right? If something's being submitted, something being requested that contradicts a board position, then the appropriate thing to do is to run it by the full board, right? So that everyone, can weigh in as to whether they agree with that or not. But if, for example, a committee is, has reviewed the preliminary, the executive budget and seen that something that they requested or something that's important to the work of their, in their subject area is, on the line to be cut, funding on the line to be cut, and they want to respond to that, they certainly can. You don't need to go to full board and get it voted on. That's just another month, another number of weeks. If it's, you're already, let's say the housing committee wants to support, funding for tenant resources, right? And the mayor, this is an example, the mayor is saying, we're going to cut funding for tenant resources, right? Then by all means, the housing committee can go ahead and just say that, like, no, this should not be done for these reasons, blah, blah, blah.
Xavier?
To kind of echo what Angel is saying, and in the past, this has happened where and again, this is a living document that's evolved over time, is that it becomes a reference point. So if we find a position in the executive budget that is contraindicated to our position that we have staked out, there's nothing that precludes the particular committee to act on behalf. And if ever there's a question, you just run it by Angel and myself or yourself and keeping tabs on everything. But again, because we have to be responsive and timely, each committee, and then circling back with yours, should be constantly examining these positions on, again, tracking it. But yeah, so.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Got you. Xavier, your hand is still up. So that's pretty much it. I'm hoping you guys kind of understand the idea behind this, where we're at, what we're doing, what are our next steps. If you guys have any other questions, like I'm at service, guys. Like, give me a call, 917-721-2763. Oh wait, maybe I shouldn't have said that because this is public. I screened my call, so we're good. But I'm seriously, guys, you guys call me if you need this assistance. I'm going to, hopefully, Xavier, once you post this on YouTube or wherever you post it, if you get me the link, I want to share it with our committee board members so they get an opportunity to look at it. Angel, I don't know if you want to add anything else that I'm maybe missing.
Yes, thank you, Stephanie. Okay, there's a part where Angel complains. Stephanie asked multiple times at this meeting for folks to weigh in, and with a couple of exceptions, it was quiet. That is the problem. This is a committee that could do a lot of really good work and is not operating to its potential and hasn't since its inception years ago, which has been incredibly frustrating. All of these conversations that happen at the community board about we want this, we need that, that is all the subject matter of this committee. And this committee needs to be pushing that and not just saying it from the chair's position, when I appreciate Stephanie for saying it, but from the membership itself. All 9 of y'all should be super eager to have this conversation because it's actually, this committee has the potential to be one of the most important committees on the board. And it's just a dud. Okay, I'm sorry, it just is. A lot of work goes in from the staff to prepare this stuff for years, and it's 1 or 2 members that engage with it. Our statement reflects that lack of work. Our budget request follow-up reflects that kind of work. And that we're not successful in more of our budget requests is reflective of our lack of engagement and advocacy for our budget requests. There's no point sugarcoating it. It is what it is. A council member never looks at our list of budget requests. Never. They never look at it. Never. They've told us as much. You have to go to them. You have to go to them and tell them, hey, these are our budget requests. This is what's important to us. And you have to go to them privately in meetings. You have to go to them at their hearings, at all the hearing opportunities that they have. You also have to be looking at what the mayor is proposing. The mayor has proposed outlandish things and as part of his preliminary budget and executive, so far. Wild. And the council's been hitting him left and right. If you're reading the paper, you'll see it. Super long complaints about his policy agenda and not a word from CB11, right? Like that's an opportunity to wait and say, hey, look, this is important to us. And you absolutely should not be cutting funding, for example, to libraries, right? One moment you hear cuts to libraries, which is just a classic. Every time a mayor wants to supposedly save us from financial oblivion, they go to the libraries like that's going to save something. When we all understand that, a couple of $1 million here and a couple of $1 million there is devastating to the New York Public Library system, right? To the public libraries, but it does nothing to save the city from its financial hardships if they're in that state. Nothing. Right, so just some symbolic nonsense and an irresponsibility. Meanwhile, the police department just got a massive contract, right? So and that's not an anti-police statement. Good for them, but you have fire safety doors in public schools that aren't being replaced. You have libraries whose hours are being cut. Those are the kinds of things that we should be weighing in on, and it should be our membership that's engaged in wanting to do it, that's motivated to want to do it. Now, I say all this to say no one's forcing you to do it. If you don't want to be on the committee, then please, by all means, don't be on the committee. But there's a potential with this committee, but that potential can only be realized if we have members that are motivated to do the work. And it's, there are other committees that I can say the very same thing to, right? But since this is the committee that's meeting this evening, I'll say it to you all. I'm urging you. If you're not interested, then please step off. But if you are interested, then please step up. Like this is a juicy committee potentially, but it's just not happening. Like everyone gets really excited about the land use stuff every time there's a rezoning, but that's every once in a while. The budget stuff is every day. It's every day. It's constantly something, right? Like we should be, CB11. Should be saying, look, we read this in the paper, the Mayor Adams is proposing the following, Councilmember Ayala, Councilmember Jordan, Councilmember, whoever the hell else we have, like we need you to advocate on our behalf, to ensure that these cuts don't actually come to fruition. That should be all the time. But if they're not hearing from us, then they don't know what it is that we think is important. But we have to be doing that. And that only happens if y'all are motivated to do it. And one last thing I'll say, sorry, Stephanie, for going on so long.
Go ahead.
As staff, we've tried 100 different ways to do this budget stuff, right? And it's 100 different ways because we want to engage, we want the members to be plugged in, right? Because the alternative is that the staff just doesn't, right? And that's fine. I'm responsible with your stuff and I do my work that's always reflective of what you guys say in your meetings, and so does our staff. However, that's not the way it should happen, right? We should be here as administrators putting pen to paper for you, but it should be you all having the discussions, and we're happy and privileged to be part of the conversations, but we shouldn't be having the conversations alone. We could go, and I talked about this with Stephanie, so just, to be perfectly honest, I said to her, and I've said to her predecessors, we could do it this way or we could do it another way. If you all choose to not have this committee and just have the district manager do the statement, fine, I'll get a couple of interns and I'll figure it out. Right? I'm not going to be proposing positions that are outlandish, because all I've done in my time working here and all the staff has done is push forward things that are in the interest of the community as I hear it from the board members, right? So you'll be safe there. But that is not ideal. And that's not what I want to do. Nor do I think it's a correct thing to do. It should be the members. but I can't kick you. I can only urge you, right? Like, you're the ones that need to be sitting there saying, hey, yeah, no, I read this thing and I wrote this other thing and blah, blah, blah. And, not waiting for, like, right now we have Stephanie, Stephanie's waiting for responses and she hears from 1 or 2 people. It should be everyone. And this is an encouragement. I'm not chastising you. I'm encouraging you, because the process only benefits from your participation. But if honestly you can't do it, then please let us know. And there's no shame in that, right? And then we'll figure out who can, because this process will only work truly the right way if we have people that are motivated to wanting to do it. Otherwise, we're just, burning paper and, spending time on Zoom unnecessarily. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. Nelsa?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I can't, I'm Zoom challenged. So I agree with what Angel's saying, but I just want to say something so that I can get helped, right? Because I'm talking about me, right? This is the first time that I'm on a state district needs and budget committee person, as opposed to being the person that's presented the information and carries it forth a certain way, right? As the former chair of Community Board 11. So I just wanted to bring up the fact that the lack of participation that may be heard is because members may be unsure of what their role is, which I think was a great thing that you did, Stephanie, when you opened up the meeting, right? And I think Angel's absolutely right in that we have to be more vocal. Speaking for myself only, right, I would benefit. And I think this committee, you have people who are maybe new to this process or have just been on this process for this year. And maybe we're not clear in terms of, I think skits would be helpful, right? I think it might be, I can see Angel maybe twisting his lip in the office, but I always benefit from role play, right? Like, what is the ideal that we would like to see this committee work as? What are the expectations? And not just verbal, but the actual practice, right? The practice of knowing that we as a committee is using this aim to make sure that we would then, let's say, testify, right? So having that discussion with each of the committees, that there's an expectation that they actively participate, because if they don't actively participate, then we will actively participate on their behalf, which is not always ideal, but it's a small group. And for instance, if I have a great land use chair, right? Jason doesn't, he doesn't shy away from if he had to go and give testimony on behalf of the community board. But in cases where you may have a chair that doesn't, then as the vice chair, that we're empowered with what we've come up with through our statement, that we can feel comfortable doing that with the engagement of the chair of the board, which may or may not be necessary depending on what the position is. We would never go contrary, but I'm just saying that I think that a lot of times you hear quiet because people are just thinking and not realizing how active we could be until someone brings it to our attention. So, I just wanted to say that and get any feedback or pushback. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nelsa. Xavier.
Thank you, Steph. I wanted to give a little bit of history with this, and not to put people to sleep, because budget is exciting. When we went through our last bylaw revision, we envisioned this committee, as Angel opined, to be a very powerful committee that could weigh in and interact with all of the council members or throughout the budget process advocating at every stage. And that included, but wasn't limited to, the process we're at now, checking in with our council members and their pet projects, things that they were aligned with, whether it was an environmental concern or sanitation, housing, for example. These are all components that play a part in the budget process. And again, we each have different relationships with both the current borough president and the previous and current council members. And it's important that we, as we check in and advocate, especially if we have the positions already enshrined, whether previous iteration of the budget request that remained unsatisfied or is current, or there's a history and trend, that we keep advocating for that. And when we founded this committee, it was a long time coming, and one tracking, creating the process. And I appreciate the staff and every leader in those positions. It's been an evolving program. At the heart of it is that it was to enable each committee to advocate, and which is why every member here is a vice chair of the committee. They bring back information, whether it's a commentary or something that was brought up. No, we didn't strike out a position. However, we did talk about these particular items, or this is coming up and there is no deviation from the previous positions, or there was no comment at this time because the position has already been cited and we don't need to discuss it further. Again, it is a process that's engaged constantly. And I think with that, it was to empower the committee to really advocate from our needs, right? Which is at the heart of it. And if it means like adding a couple sentences with a statement and a little addendum, great. If it's an additional budget request, from as simple as a stop sign to more advocacy for a boiler at a NYCHA complex, that is at the heart of it, what this committee is charged with, being informed by the other committees of the board and then advocating. So I hope that's helpful. And again, it's as much as people want to be plugged into, but I would encourage you to find out not just your internal bandwidth, but how you can best advocate for our needs. And don't be afraid to call up. Steph has made herself available, Angel, all the others. I'm available. And again, I can't be the only one knocking on the door telling a council member or the CAU, we need this, why don't we have it? So I want you all to be empowered to that level. You're muted.
Thank you, Xavier. So I'm gonna ask you so to speak, but before I ask you so to speak, Nilsa, your hand is still up, and Xavier, your hand is down. Thank you. Giselle.
So I have a comment as well. And it's more so like Nilsa said, just to get help for myself. I think that what's mostly, I'm gonna say frustrating, but what's mostly frustrating for me about the process when it starts in September is that I feel like assigning the liaison this role kind of, it's like a pass for other members on the committee to like not really do much. So it all falls on one person, which is the liaison. And I understand that, you know, this is pretty much the whole point of this committee, but I feel like if we go back to our committees with information, with concerns, we'll leave a whole, 20 minutes to talk about this. But if you're not getting that feedback, if you're not getting that support that you need from your committee, then now you're doing this entire process by yourself. And I have felt this way, which is why sometimes it's like, you don't really want to do this by yourself, because it shouldn't be just your ideas or your words or your, requests in a way. Yeah, you'll have, again, one person or maybe two people to like, well, I think this is snap, but that's really not enough. Again, like Angel said, this could be like a really vigorous engagement in this community going on. But if we don't have really much to bring back, it's just like we're pretty much doing this by ourselves. And that's what I feel like my first year on this board, I was the liaison. And I pretty much did the work by myself, which was very intimidating, but thank God we got through it. For some reason, it's kind of like, okay, you did it once or twice, the entire process. No, you do need a refresher, which I think that worksheet and all of that stuff that Angel sends us every year is very helpful. It refreshes me, but perhaps maybe a solution to what I'm saying is like, aside from the liaison, because in my instance, the liaison, I'm also the vice chair. In September, I'll be the chair. So if I'm chair and liaison, it's kind of like, you just need that support. So maybe helping the liaison, like assigning, going to your committee and being like, hey, I need 2 people to help me this year throughout this process. And then you kind of split the work. And then, yes, of course, the liaison brings that back and, does the proofreading and putting it together to present it here. But I think that will be helpful. So it's just a suggestion, not that it has to happen this year in September, but I think it would help just the board completely. Not really the board, the community, but it would help. I think Angel would feel less of having to chase people down, or because the same way that it's not fair to leave it to Angel, it really wouldn't be fair to leave it just to the liaison. If the liaison could get some support in the sense from its committee, if that person isn't really getting the engagement that he needs, then that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Giselle. Asher?
Um, I'm gonna keep it short because a lot of people have already said what I was thinking, but just something that, this is me personally, something that I think that I would find helpful, because this is only my second year on the board and second time going through the budget process. It's really the first time I'm like actively involved in it. It's just like a crash course about how everything works. Like, just like it wouldn't have to be like a long thing, but just like, so I know when I come back to my committee exactly like the most effective way and efficient way to do this process with my committee. So
Thank you, Asher. Giselle and Asher, your hands are still up. Nilsa, I'm assuming you have something to say, but before you have something to say, because your hand is up. So, Nilsa, Giselle, and Asher, you guys like pointed out something that's very important. Like you said, maybe a crash course or refresher, understanding your roles. So maybe that's something we can do in September, right before like the whole process starts. And maybe once again, we would do it if and when we like lose or members change from committees. So that may be something I'll talk over with Angel to see if that's something that we may want to do. Change of committee members, or in September do like a crash course, a refresher, so we know what it is, show people where to find the timeline, explain the timeline. Maybe we can definitely do that. I don't know if we did that, we may have done that, but I will make sure that that's something we do. I'm thinking maybe we can even take a few minutes during full board and executive board to have the conversation as to what this committee does, what this committee does, and how we could make sure that, especially in the executive board, because those are the chairs, we need their support, right? We need their help when it comes to this. It can't just be coming from the liaison. I think as liaison, my suggestion would be is when you guys walk into these committee meetings, just remember, like, there are certain things that are important in district needs, right? Like when you hear an organization talking about they need funding for this, they heard that there's funding cut for this. Just last night, just so you can correct me if I'm wrong, in our ECHO Dev meeting, Carrie King from Uptown Grand Central just explained to us that the funding from DOT is going to be cut, and so they may not have funding for open streets, right? We love open streets. We know how important that was to this community. We know how important that was to the small businesses. If there's any way that can continue, that's something that may be Echo Deb wants to take up and say, hey, we want to respond to depending on what the executive budget says, we want to respond to them and tell them, hey, no, we want you to make sure that you continue the funding for this, right? So that's kind of like one of the components to this, right? Or if there's policy that we see that's coming, that we want to change, right? Like there's legislation right now for the state and resolutions for the state and the city to provide more funding for the tenant support, right? That's an actual thing that's happening right now. This is not an example, this is actually happening right now. So maybe this is something that the housing committee wants to take up and say, hey, no, we definitely want to fund this. This should be something that should be put in legislation. So there's always funding opportunities or funding connected to this type of programming where tenants are getting attorneys in eviction process. And that's all I'm gonna say. Angel, I see your hand is up, so I'll give it to Nilsa first and then Angel. Go ahead, Nilsa.
I'm gonna keep it short. Yeah, I appreciate everything that everyone has said here. And I want to say to Stephanie and Angel and others, I know how hard you will work on this committee. I think it's important that we don't let the chairs off the hook. And I think we don't need that the committee's off the hook. I think that oftentimes, because you're a liaison, there's an expectation that the district needs and budget committee is assigned to do the work for the district needs statement. And that is not true. I think that there has to be clarity as to what our role is, that we're supposed to be a juicy committee and we will be doing work and we will, give testimony or whatever the parameters become. But I think that oftentimes, a lot of times the committee, the liaison can go and present and ask for feedback, and it's like pulling teeth, which is what Angel was alluding to that happened here, where we were quiet initially because I believe that we were trying to think about the direct questions, right? As opposed to not really having the answer. And I think that the chairs, I think that there has to be a responsibility put on the chairs where there's an expectation that the committees will have to testify at some point on a position that the committee is putting forth, so that the people start doing the work, not when the statement of district needs and budget is being put together, that they start doing the work every committee meeting and in topics that they want to see brought forth. I haven't had enough coffee, so obviously I don't think I'm making myself too clear.
No, I think we understand.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah, basically want the committee itself in each meeting kind of like maybe go over like what policies are important to us that came up in this meeting, or what budget needs are important to us that came up in this meeting, right?
Exactly.
And have the committee engage and kind of opine, as Xavier would say.
And maybe one member on the committee can look at legislation and policy that affects them. We're going to be looking at that, right? Because it was mentioned here that we should, right? And we should engage. But the fact of the matter is that the chair of that committee should be driving the conversations and should have the skill set to engage the committee. And the way that Angel threw it out there and said that we were a fuddy-duddy committee, although he didn't use those words, I'm saying it. I said it. That we have the potential to be a better committee, then maybe that's the language that also has to be used in an executive meeting where there's expectation of the chairs too. We can't just be a chair in name only. Like if we have to advocate and you have a senior leadership position, then maybe we all need training. Every single member of us, not just the district needs and budget committee. That's it. I'm going to shut up. All right.
Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying. I'm definitely offline. I'm going to talk to Angel to see if maybe Angel can answer that. I kind of want to see if we can do like a refresher course for the full board and for the executive board, and kind of have that conversation where like remind people we need you to engage. You should be talking about this in every meeting. And so forth. Angel, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I was going to say, I think it's good. So I like Asher's idea of like a refresher, or I forgot what term she used, Actually used. But I think that's a good idea. Let's do that. I would not wait till September, though. I would do it earlier. Ideally in anticipation of starting the process for the 25 fiscal year. But something to do even before then is for this committee to determine how it wants to work, right? So Carly, right, prepared that work plan that Stephanie shared earlier, right, lays out a number of steps. What does that mean to you? What, like, does this still work for you? How are you going to make each one of those steps, happen or not? And then this idea that Nilsa was, talking about, like, the committee chairs being engaged in the process, or the committees themselves being engaged in the process, you all going to the committees and then hearing crickets. That's all evidence that you can use to then make a determination. To my initial question of, like, how do you want to do the work? You know what, maybe you're saying that you want to do it, but you're not showing that you actually want to do it. So then maybe you don't want to do it. So then maybe the budget committee just does it, right? And I talked about this a bit with, when Steph and I met, a few weeks ago, like, maybe the model needs to change. And that's, maybe because of lessons learned from having tried it, like, even before we, redid the bylaws and established this budget committee, we had gone through this a number of times too, a number of different iterations. How do we engage the SDM process? Blah, blah. Tried everything. And one idea was, okay, let's establish a budget committee, and still it hasn't really done the trick. So maybe it's a matter of the budget committee is going to lead the charge. Yes, we're going to keep the door open, but we're going to do it vice chairs and chairs, right? The vice chair sitting here, and the chair is going to be consulted with and spoken with, and they can certainly attend whenever they wish. But we're not going to keep pulling our hair out trying to reach, member number 13 on the Economic Development Committee that never had anything to say, right? Because, not to disparage member number 13, but because we've seen 7-8 years worth of they're not interested in participating. It is what it is. You could tell me you love me till you're blue in the face. You got to show me, right? And that, again, this is not to disparage anyone. People will show you. They'll vote with their feet. They're going to demonstrate, like, I want to do this. I don't want to do it. Like Angel is talking right now because I want you guys to do it. If I didn't care, I'd stop talking, right? I want you guys to do it. But maybe, if we have a committed budget committee team, they're like, okay, Carly laid out a bunch of stuff, got it, we can do this, we will do it. Hey, chairs, this is how we're doing it, plug in. Or we're just gonna keep rocking. And like I was saying earlier, if I was doing it myself, I'm not gonna be irresponsible. If this committee is doing it itself, it's not going to be irresponsible. And since there's numerous of you, numerous of you, whatever. There's several of you. If somebody's going off script and saying some just outlandish stuff, then there's the rest of you to say, well, actually, no, I don't agree with that. We shouldn't be taking that position, right? So there's room for collaboration and coordination and consensus. And there's also a check. There's also checks if one of the positions being represented is out of the orbit. So all that to say, maybe y'all might want to consider, a different approach to how it's done, where the reaching out all the time constantly is showing itself time and again, it's not going to be effective because the rest of the other 40 members of the board are not interested, right? Or the majority of them are not. Then perhaps, okay, this important work has to be done. We are committed to doing it. We're going to do it. Our meetings are public. We're going to tell you, come, but I'm not going to be here waiting for you. Like, I'm not going to be pulling my hair out if you're not interested, right? And then once that's settled, then I think you have the rest of the year on all your meetings to be thinking about things more proactively. So you're seeing things in news and you're discussing it as a group. hey, Stephanie, I heard this thing's happening. Oh, no, Giselle found something else. And oh, Nilsa said the other thing. And Asher said the final, right? So then you're all at the table having that discussion. Oh, I read that it's actually going up. No, I read it's going down. Or I called this agency and, they promised us 100, but we really only got 20. Like those could be the constructive conversations had if the time was being used more efficiently instead of inefficiently, because you're always on the trying to track the other 40 members down and trying to motivate them to be engaged in this process. And that's not to be, to exclude anyone. And, like the door's open and we'll tell you, but you're the one that has to plug in. And, just an idea to consider.
Thank you, Angel. Xavier?
It's funny you mentioned a refresher. That's actually something we brought up, not just with statement of district needs and budget, but holistically across the board for all of us. Everything from Robert's Rules of Order, ask the staff a question. This is another component that people should be able to plug in so that if you're a committee member and you read an article that related to the budget, you can then ping that over to the vice chair of the committee and the chair and say, hey, could you take this back to statement of district needs and budget? That it could be that simple of a process. So you're constantly having the conversation and communicating with one another. So it's funny that you mentioned about a refresher. So I'm more than pleased to include those components as well. So thank you very much for bringing that up. I think it'd be very helpful, and the sooner the better. So we can all have a chat on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Xavier. Giselle? You're still on mute, Giselle.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we could that, you guys hear me?
Now we do.
Okay, if we could start that, I think that would be a good idea to just leave it to that one person. They take their time to, meet the deadlines, to have the discussions, open it up to whoever from the committee wants to attend. But that you are the one responsible. You have to make sure that these documents are here. You're reviewing it, and we're just keeping the conversation here. I would say, just as a suggestion, in case something happens where that person, the liaison, for whatever reason, isn't a board member anymore, so that committee doesn't kind of fall off in the whole budget conversation thing, that they, I would say, not before they leave, teach the person that's taking on the liaison role, but just have that backup person that is also engaged in the process, so that if that person has to leave, the committee is still doing the work. And yeah.
I got you. That's it, Giselle? All right. Angel?
I'm sorry, just a quick thing that I thought of as Giselle was commenting. Maybe we could add a budget committee liaison report to all the agendas. You know how we've been doing these information updates at the top of everything? And maybe we could just slide it in there. And if you guys have stuff to say, then, you're in front of them every month with something budget related when you have it.
Yep. That I actually like that idea. All right, so I definitely like that idea. I definitely like the refresher idea. Thank you guys so much. I don't think there's anything else left to be said. Angel, I guess if you want to go back to your PowerPoint, I think now is when we do like old business. Old business? I don't think we have any old business. We talked a lot about our old business, but we don't have anything. Unless I'm wrong, Angel?
No, I have nothing.
Nope, good. Any new business? My people, please speak to me. This is what you guys are here for. You are speaking for your community. If you have any new business. All right, awesome. Angel, unless you have anything else to be said, me and you are definitely gonna talk offline. So we can figure out when we would do a refresher course. But I feel like we're all on the same page. We're definitely gonna do a refresher course. And we're definitely gonna move forward in just the liaison being the point person and the chair. And that's where we get our responses from, and that's how we're gonna do it. We're gonna make sure that the district needs liaison will have PB office, I'm sorry. We will make sure that the district needs liaison will have a talking point on the PowerPoint, so they will have an opportunity to bring up information to the committee, tell the committee what we're doing at the moment, and to see if there's any information that they can take in to bring back to us, so we can move forward in doing the good work that this committee can do. I don't see any hands up. Angel, do you see any hands up? Anybody want to say anything before we leave? I don't see any. Angel, if you can do roll call, please.
Sure. Stephanie Arroyo,
Yeah.
Giselle. Malik. Oh, he's not here. Nelsa,
Here.
Arturo,
Here.
Asher,
Here.
Jason,
Present.
Michelle.
Present.
We have quorum.
Awesome. You got Giselle, right? I don't know if you heard her.
Yes, I got Giselle, yeah.
Thank you guys. I appreciate you guys. Have a great day or a great evening.
Have a great morning, everyone.
Thank you. Have a
Bye
good
now.
night.
Thank you. Good night.